Elevate your happy hour at the Library of Congress, which is open late on Thursdays for Live at the Library. Enjoy cocktails in the iconic Thomas Jefferson Building alongside live music, author talks, exhibits, and more. It's all free, eclectic, and inspired by the library's collections. On deck for August are outdoor film screenings, a K-pop night, and folk concert with Amanda Pascali. Plan your next night out at loc.gov/live. Today on CityCast DC, the National Guard is sticking around. And like a lot of people who decide to stay in DC, they are about to pay through the nose for real estate. CityCast's Alyssa Fowers and Emma Uber looked through the contract. They've crunched the numbers, and they are here to explain what it means that the troops are about to pitch up in some of the city's buzziest neighborhoods. Today is Wednesday, July 29th. I'm Michael Schaefer. Here's what DC is talking about. Hey, before we get started, a quick note. We're doing our annual survey to learn more about our listeners. We would be grateful if you took the survey at dc.citycast.fm/survey. It's only 7 minutes long. You'll be doing us a big favor. Plus, anyone who takes the survey will be eligible to win a $250 Visa gift card and some cool CityCast DC swag. Okay, on to the interview. Emma, Alyssa, welcome.
Hey there. Hey, Mike.
So you guys dug into this new housing contract for the National Guard. The big takeaway for sort of DC residents is this really is another sign that they are staying. But they're not just staying, they're staying in style. Can we start with the numbers? The top line number is astonishing to me. How much does it cost and what are they getting for that?
Yeah, Emma got a look at this contract. I think she was actually the first reporter to do so. And what she found was that this is actually over a 3-year period, this $292 million. So it is a crazy amount of money, but it's like a third as crazy as it looks.
I don't know, man, like $100 million a year. I mean, just for comparison, the city's own spend on public housing is, about 200 million, a little less than. So, and a lot more people get public housing.
Yeah. I might just be biased because I came in expecting it to be $292 million for 1 year. So I'm underawed by the $97 million figure. Emma probably has a more reasonable take, though.
Right. Well, that first announcement that came out actually last week on Thursday was super unclear. And so a lot of the first reports were kind of presuming that this 292 was over 1 year. And so while $292 million is a ton of money, I was able to uncover some details about the contract. And basically, the contract is active through June 2027, but with the option to extend it for 2 more 12-month periods, which means that we could be spending millions of dollars on National Guard housing through June 2029, which is beyond even the Inauguration Day 2029 date that the Pentagon said earlier this month. So it's a lot of money. It's nearly $300 million. Though officials told me that could end up being less. It will be up to $292 million, but it's a lot of money for these kind of like swanky, pre-furnished, really nice places in really nice neighborhoods of DC.
So this covers about 2,000 service members, and it's a little bit more than, you guys did the math, that spread over that period of time. It's about $4,000 per troop, per member of the National Guard. Like, what's the company they're contracting with?
Yeah, so they're contracted with a company called Placemaker, which has 5 properties in the DC area, 4 in DC, 1 just over the river in Virginia. And they specialize in these sort of like apartment hotels. They're like long-term furnished stays. They offer pre-furnished apartments that also come with housekeeping, often have gyms in the building, are in some like nice neighborhoods like DuPont or up-and-coming neighborhoods like Buzzard Point. And so, there are these kind of just like furnished luxury style long-term housing situations, very different than like a military base.
What kind of people live in them right now?
They definitely advertise for a more corporate crowd, especially in DC. They are, they've contracted with the government before. And so like government contractors could live there. DC is a very transient city. So people who are there short term for business, it definitely seems advertised and marketed towards more of a business class crowd.
You can, though, just go on the internet and book a place there right now. I was looking at the specific properties, and you can just go on travel sites and stay at any of them.
Right. You can book a hotel stay.
So this deployment of National Guard in D.C. is about a year old. And for this time, I gather they've been staying in hotels up to now. How does this compare with that from a price point of view?
Yeah. So, if they spend $292 over 3 years, this comes out to markedly cheaper than if you booked the average 2-3-star hotel over 3 years. The government actually broke it down and said that this will fall 49% below the projected price of continuing to house the troops in short-term hotels, which then, of course, that makes me wonder how much money we've been spending to house them for the last year, because if almost $300 million is 50% below what that cost would be, the figures, start stacking up in your mind quickly.
So the sort of per month cost is about twice what a one-bedroom apartment in DC would be. And I think something that we can probably keep in mind here is that DC is a small city. There are 2,000 troops. They're not sharing rooms. When I was doing this research, it looked like there were maybe 2,700 total one-bedroom and studio apartments on the market in the district, according to Zillow. I didn't go and count them myself. So there just may not be a place to put them that's permanent.
So what I don't get, though, is, look at the military, like you don't join the military for the nice housing. And, if you're on a deployment, you are liable to be staying in a barracks or a Quonset hut or a tent or something. And the military does have a lot of bases, including around here. Could they not find a barracks to put these forces in?
It doesn't seem that they could find one with enough occupancy to house the number of troops that just keeps growing, like the number of troops peaked at 5,000 this past month. There's not 5,000 spare beds around the DC region, or apparently 2,000. I was actually just doing some research trying to see what DC's done in the past with National Guard deployments, and I was reminded that there was a bit of outrage after January 6th because a bunch of the National Guard members had to stay in the Capitol complex because there was apparently no place else to house them. So I guess DC, despite having multiple military bases, they must be full. I'm not sure.
You guys also reported that part of the contract is that nobody will have to share a room with anybody else. Again, I don't mean to be like, I like to not have to have a roommate too. So I don't begrudge this, but you'd think like sharing quarters is another thing you just do in the military when you're on deployment. What's the logic of that?
Right. I'm not sure what the logic is. Like the GSA, the Government Services Agency, wasn't like down to justify every line of their contract when I called them up. But it's true. It says quite explicitly in the contract that no service members will be sharing rooms. It's possible they'll be sharing apartments. Placemaker offers studios to up to 3 bedrooms. But yeah, this won't be a situation where there will be some troops in bunk beds, which, to your point, like regardless of how you feel about that, is not typically the picture of military service. I was actually just like on a walk in DuPont Circle the other day going to the farmer's market, and I went to take a picture of this like beautiful ornate white building just off the circle that kind of had these like beautiful finishes and these gorgeous looking windows. And then I saw the little placemaker symbol outside, and I realized that that's where some of these National Guard members might be staying. And similarly, like I don't think that you enlist in the military expecting to have housekeeping. I also don't think you enlist in the military expecting to spend this much time in DC, probably.
Also, to be fair, the National Guard is a little bit different than enlisting in the Army.
That's true.
The expectations might be a little different.
So we're approaching a year of having the Guard here. And as you mentioned, the deployment has changed a lot. I think a lot of people associated the coming of the Guard with the kind of chaos around the Trump police takeover, a lot of protests, a lot of action by the immigration authorities. Then we were all accustomed to seeing these pictures of like guardsmen, like doing landscaping at parks. And then this summer it's grown a lot. So what is the pattern and where's it heading from here as far as you know?
That's a great question. There's no end in sight is basically what has happened. I mean, I remember we're coming up on a year. It was early August last year when Trump kind of started sending the National Guard to D.C. It was originally 800 troops. And I remember at the time, that felt like a lot. Numbers have fluctuated over time, but especially recently have only ramped up. We're sitting somewhere in the 4,000s right now, but earlier this month, we had over 5,000 members from over 20 different states here in D.C. And again, earlier this month, the Pentagon told NPR, I believe, that they plan to have some level of National Guard presence in D.C. through Inauguration Day 2029. And so 2029 was not shocking, but the fact that this contract offers the option to have them stay through summer 2029 when, Trump's presidency will be over, really just speaks to how permanently, I know, based on his jokes at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, maybe we'll have another Trump presidency. But it really just speaks to the way that the government is making long-term and permanent plans to have these troops in D.C.
Early in the deployment, 2 members of the Guard were shot, killed. And I'm curious if there is any consideration of security that will be erected around or for these buildings. Is there anything in the contract about that?
There's nothing that I know of in the contract about security. I was asking the National Guard some questions, about where these buildings were, and they declined to answer, citing OPSEC, operational security, which was interesting because I didn't really have to ask because there's only 5 buildings with just over 1,000 units and they're trying to house 2,000 troops. So I know exactly the 5 buildings that these troops are going to stay in. And obviously after the shooting last year, there probably is a very legitimate concern about security. And so I'm not sure how they're going to deal with that. Again, Placemaker has been has put out a press release about this. The National Guard has put out a press release about this. It's not secret where these members are going to stay. And it's my understanding that these Placemaker units are not just going to automatically be kicking everyone out. Like there are going to be other people staying in these buildings, at least in the short term, with the National Guardsmen. And so I'm not really sure how they're planning to maintain security. And that will be something interesting to see. Are people's neighborhoods being impacted by additional security measures because all of a sudden they have National Guardsmen as neighbors?
Mm-hmm. I mean, like there's a way of looking at it. Like a lot of Washingtonians, including me, have felt like this, it is very uncomfortable as an American citizen to see armed soldiers patrolling the streets of your city. It's common in a lot of countries, but it's not part of our culture. And so there's like a discomfort there. There is one way of looking at it of like, if people are your neighbors, if people, see you when you're out with your family and so on, it makes the experience a little less alien and is maybe less likely to lead to bad outcomes in a tense situation. On the other hand, and it's unusual for the military, I think, would typically secure a location that would be its own location and that they could establish a perimeter. And, like that's not for whatever reason, that's not what's happening here. You guys have interacted with Guards people here. Is this like what's their experience like in DC as they patrol? And how do you think they're going to like this idea of just like being put in regular, albeit like really nice apartment buildings in neighborhoods where like other young professionals live?
I wish I knew. In my experience, they've been extremely skittish to talk to the press, understandably. As a DC resident, it's been awkward and uncomfortable, and at first, I think frightening to see them. And now I kind of don't bat an eye. I've not had any negative interactions. They've opened doors or picked up trash around the metro or whatever. I think they're having like a big PR push at times. I walked past a group of National Guardsmen with a camera in DuPont Circle the other day, and an angry, I assume, Washingtonian was yelling at them, like, get out of my city. Why do you have a camera? And they were like, it's public relations. So they were doing a little photo shoot. I know they've been like going to like kids' schools and like daycares and like handing out stickers and things, and parents aren't really pleased about that. So I think it's a tension that we've seen, but they've kind of retreated to these hotels, often in Virginia or Maryland, overnight. And I would expect to see maybe some tensions flare up again with them being neighbors. I mean, maybe, Mike, there's a world in which people are like, they're humans. But I think DC is just so fed up in general with having them here that it's going to be awkward and uncomfortable at the best.
Every time I see those uniforms, I just remember being in the city after January 6th. It's really hard for me to look at the National Guard in the city and, be like, oh, that's my neighbor, instead of that's somebody in that uniform. Something is very wrong here. And I think a lot of people have that feeling.
Just before we wrap, there has been various litigation over the National Guard presence. Is the deployment to DC legal? Is it illegal? What's the history there and where does it stand?
Yeah, so there's been a lengthy legal battle, honestly, more accurately, many legal battles over the National Guard in DC. Lawmakers, advocacy groups continue to protest the presence of the National Guard in DC. Way back when this first started, kind of in fall 2025, a U.S. district judge said that the deployment was unlawful and granted a preliminary injunction. But then, just before the end of 2025 in December, an appeals court lifted the injunction and allowed the National Guard members to remain like in DC, on duty, present. And so honestly, like a lot of Trump actions in DC, there is ongoing litigation, but it doesn't seem to be changing the day-to-day reality of what us DC residents are experiencing.
Emma, Alyssa, thank you guys so much.
Thanks for having us, Mike.
Thank you.
And that is all for today here on CityCast DC. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend, rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our morning newsletter. We will be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Bye.